I'm Johnny. I'm a global artist ambassador for FENIX360, and I'm joined today by the author, Stephen Siciliano. Hello, Stephen. How are you?
Oh, good to see you.
Good to see you too, mate. I appreciate you being here, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of your work, Stephen, with our audience. I'd like to learn also about your journey as becoming an author and some of the books you published. But for right now, can we tune in to your YouTube channel and look at a performance that is accompanied by flamenco guitar?
Absolutely.
That sounds great. Okay, let's everyone tune in now to Stephen Siciliano.
Marfil, marfil of womb and dangling moons, down your rosewood neck. Don't want to dance without touching, marfil. Only want to marry you and be still. Sangria. Sangria, you give your man a cigarette, your face is sweet, but your soul is cold like the summer drink for your name. You get. The fandango starts out very slow with me singing. My feel, my feel. And the guitar player getting the attention. Maldito didn't stick out enough. At the end, the fandango gets fast so that like the summer drink for your name. When we just played it a few times, very fast enough. But Tomatito drowned me out. It was true what they said. He didn't get connected with the person at El Cante. The singer only mattered a little to him. People didn't really like the song. A fandango with one girl singing that way about other girls made them too uncomfortable. But I couldn't help it. I couldn't get the marvelous flamencas off my mind, and I just had to write it and sing about marfil and sangria.
Hey, Stephen, that's beautiful, man. And I love the inspiration and the heart behind the work. And I'm wondering whether or not you might tell me, where are you from and how did your journey in becoming an author all begin?
You know, I'm an all-American boy, born of Spanish and Italian parents. I was born in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. My dad was a paratrooper and a West Point graduate.
Wow.
I grew up just outside of New York. It wasn't New York City proper, but we didn't make that distinction then. We were right in the mix of it and went to all the big concerts and in the 70s when the city was falling apart. Very influential. Every time I went to New York, it just would be like my mind would explode.
Big
And
yeah.
I went to college at Arkansas State University for 2 years. I liked Southern rock and roll and music and was playing guitar at the time. And I wanted to see another part of the country. Went there for 2 years, transferred over to Old Dominion University in Virginia to get a little more serious about things.
Sure.
I graduated, came out to LA, got a job with, suit and tie selling something, still not sure what. And was sitting on a bench one day with a neighbor of mine, guy who worked lawns at USC, and he said to me, you're not happy. Why don't you become a writer? I watch you read all the time, and he was right. Out of college, I suddenly became a bookworm because I missed what up until that point in my life had been normal, which is to be taught and learn. And suddenly I was working a job, and that wasn't happening. So just like that, with the help of this fellow person in my life who I've never seen again, I made a decision to become a writer, and Los Angeles being the place it was at the time, very open and willing to take young people without much experience. I got a job as a reporter at the California Apparel News.
Wow.
And a year later signed on with B&A, the Bureau of National Affairs, which was an old-time think tank information service down in Washington, D.C., where I unfolded a long career, 40 years as a reporter. And I really wanted to do literature. I was just following Mark Twain's advice that anybody who doesn't write for money is a fool. And so I developed a parallel career as a complete autodidact, starting out with small poems and moving on to what I thought was a novel, but was really a novella. And then being in Los Angeles, was drafted into the entertainment industry and wrote a feature film, independent feature film, and at one point went to Spain to see some guys that I had met here studying at UCLA, and I fell in love with Seville and the whole region of Andalusia in southern Spain. And when I got back, I did what many artists do. I wanted to be there, so I began to write a novel about that place, and it was through the eyes of a young flamenco singer named Vedette, who becomes an anarchist during the Spanish Civil War, because that's really her politics. That's where she fits. She's marginalized, oppressed outside of what we call the sacred community. I eventually had to move to Spain to really do that the right way. And so I did. I returned to Los Angeles after 4 years, which I came back penniless and ruined. The original idea was to stay about 2 years, come back, take advantage of my contacts and get rolling. But once I was in Spain, I knew that I left. That experience would never be duplicated and that window would close. So I stayed and kind of came back ruined. And the second half of my life has been publishing Vedette and making that happen, moving on to The Sidewalk Smokers, a second novel, and still a third. I married a fashion designer named Anna Hewling, who was much wealthier, prettier, and successful than I. And we had a nice life for a while, and she got Alzheimer's disease. I now, ironically enough, get paid by the state to stay home and take care of her, which allows me to continue, although not under the best of circumstances, to develop my art. I continue to write novels and poetry and have branched out over the years into guitar playing and painting as well.
Wow, multidisciplinary artist. And, I appreciate that journey so much, Stephen. Thank you for that. And I think about when you shared, initially when you decided, that Death of a Salesman was was your trajectory into art, and also, become a journalist, and all the places you traveled and be inspired through your experience in Spain, and then of course, your love affair with your wife. I'm sorry that she's enduring her condition currently, but certainly everything that you've experienced is so dynamic and has such depth, and so it must really come across in all of your writing, which I'm looking forward to discovering myself, and also looking forward to sharing with everyone here that's watching our show. Also wanted to find out from you, Stephen, in your experience, all these different kinds of professionals and artists also who probably inspired you in some way and have helped influence your own art. What kind of authors or other kinds of artists that helped inspire you?
Well, there are two primary authors. In that period, when I first graduated from college and started to read, I came upon Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude. And the simultaneous decision to become a writer was to kind of write that book. And Vedette is like that. It's full of magical realism and impossibilities that are possible because of life being unable to capture, art being unable to imitate all that is life. The other is Jack Kerouac, and he has fallen in disfavor in recent years for any number of reasons. But as a young adventurer, his Bible on the road impressed me, and his lifestyle was something that I tried to emulate without the pitfalls. I'm not an addict and I'm not an alcoholic, and I didn't call my mom for money all the time. Right. But his approach to art and life, kind of where he broke down the barrier between the two, was something that has always guided me. And more simply, just he's still a hero to me. I'm not a young man anymore, but he's still someone that I really admire. So those are two of the really big ones. Of course, I lived in southern Spain, and what's his name? Federico Garcia Lorca, his poetry, which is old-fashioned symbolism. It loves moons and bulls and beautiful ladies with white thighs. But for many years, I was under his sway as well, and his influence, continues.
That's wonderful. And it's an enchanting spell that these authors have the ability to capture us and our imaginations and our attention. And the artists themselves, you know what I mean, can be ruffian in some way. And that's also kind of like an aspect of, also, I think that the art emerges from people of all shades and sizes and demeanors. And so at any rate, whatever you happen to love or gravitate to, I find inspiring. for whoever it may have been who inspired you. So at any rate, thanks for that. Now I'm wondering, Stephen, with everything you've done, what are you working on right now that you're cultivating and intend to promote soon?
I'm progressive, rather left-wing person. And the third novel that I decided to write was on a gentleman named Vito Marcantonio. He was a radical congressman for the American Labor Party in East Harlem in the 1930s and 1940s, an early progressive that we don't know much about, but the first man to introduce anti-lynching legislation, a friend to all minorities, not just the Negro, but this is what he stood for. He was a rather remarkable guy. And I also got in touch with him. I was becoming middle-aged, and I was looking for someone else to emulate. Jack Kerouac was dead by 46, and Vito Marcantonio was someone that I could relate to because he came from New York like me, and he was Italian-American like me. And my grandmother had told me about him before anybody else, a completely apolitical woman who just said he helped everybody. So I wrote a fictional account of his life. And part of that process involved joining a group, the Vito Marcantonio Forum back in New York, where I thought I'll join these people, tap them for their knowledge, and also create an audience for the book this time. I've learned some lessons from my prior publication. You got to know where you're going to put it. And that has been 10 years. The novel was finished 5 years ago. I'm a little late in getting it done because I've still been working with this group. And then we got hit with the pandemic, but that would be the next project. I also performed in New York City in Greenwich Village a few years ago. I only have footage of that with a piano player doing American songbooks to the novel. It was a better fit and came out beautifully. So that's something that is waiting to happen, and we'll get done this year, I think.
Well, we're going to look forward to that for sure, Stephen. And that character and that individual, it reminds me also of kind of feelings I have about Howard Thurman. Who wrote Jesus and the Disinherited, and it was actually a real inspiration for Martin Luther King, was his mentor.
I did not know that book or that author.
Yeah, you should really learn about Howard Thurman. He was also one of the first who actually had used multimedia to have his lectures recorded and available, and they're all available on YouTube. I really encourage you to check them out. Howard Thurman,
the big YouTuber. I like to you can learn a lot.
Yeah, indeed. And so at any rate, I appreciate learning. Everything I have is a great education for me today, Stephen. And I love everything you've worked on, and it has really been a treat for me. And so thanks very much for that. I want everyone to tune into Stephen Siciliano's social media channels. You'll find him below our interview today. And we're also going to look forward to him coming up on FENIX360. It's really nice to have your voice as part of our platform, Stephen, because it's very powerful. Thanks, man.
Thank you. I feel welcome, and I'm excited about FENIX360. I wish you all the luck. It's a great vision.
All right. Thank you, brother. You take good care.
The child, the daughter of a fisherman who was living in a largely Gothic and medieval social order. And she becomes a character who is guilty of many dark things, but whose saving grace is the fact that she never tells a lie in a time when everybody is telling lies. This is to Omar's piece Abuelita from his album Dynamisto. It is called Abuelita, as I said once. I took the kids to play out by the banks of the Rio, where my father was steering his boat towards San Lucar de Barrameda and out to the Atlantic Sea. Maybe he was going to Africa and would return his head full of clouds, his bag stuffed with golden sand and other treasures he found in his roaming to try and forget me. He waved when he saw me running along the banks by his green, red, and blue fishing boat. He had the little skiff with Vedette painted on the bow, trailing behind. I yelled to my father,